Have you ever heard a whisper in the quiet of the night, a faint echo of forgotten conversations? Perhaps you've stumbled upon a strange, unexplainable artifact in an old curiosity shop, or felt the pull of a mystery that just won't let go. Well, tonight, as you snuggle down, we're going to dive into one of humanity's most persistent and perplexing enigmas, the story of Atlantis. It's a tale that has sparked countless debates, fueled obsessive quests, and tantalized minds for millennia. Is it pure fiction, a cautionary myth, or a faded memory of a once grand civilization lost to the waves? Some say it's all a big misunderstanding, while others swear you can almost hear the ghostly chimes of Atlantean bells ringing from the depths. It's a question that has baffled scholars, adventurers, and dreamers alike. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, why not tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is? It's always fascinating to see how far these bedtime stories travel. Now, imagine yourself drifting back through time, not just centuries, but millennia. You find yourself in ancient Greece, perhaps lounging in a shaded courtyard, listening to a wise old man recount tales that predate even the pyramids. This isn't just any storyteller. This is Plato, one of the most famous philosophers in history, and he's about to introduce you to a civilization so extraordinary, so advanced, yet so tragically lost that it will forever haunt the human imagination. Plato didn't just invent Atlantis out of thin air, though historians still argue whether he truly believed in its literal existence or used it as a philosophical allegory. He claimed to have heard the story from his ancestor, Solon, who, in turn, received it from Egyptian priests during his travels. It's like a cosmic game of telephone, stretching back further than most recorded history. You see, Plato didn't mention Atlantis in just one of his famous dialogues. He dedicated significant portions of two Timaeus and Critias to its legend. In Timaeus, the story is introduced as a preface, setting the stage for a discussion about the ideal state and the origins of the cosmos. Think of it as the appetizer before the main course. Plato's character, Critias, who is supposedly recounting Solon's account, describes Atlantis as a powerful island nation located beyond the Pillars of Heracles, a phrase that typically refers to the Strait of Gibraltar. This immediately sets a grand, almost epic scale for the narrative. As you listen, you learn that this Atlantean empire was a maritime superpower, ruling over not just its own vast island, but also parts of the continents of Europe and Africa. They were initially a virtuous and wise people, descendants of the god Poseidon himself. Picture a utopian society, bathed in golden light, where justice and harmony reigned supreme. They possessed incredible wealth, thanks to their abundant natural resources, including a mysterious glowing metal called orichalcum, which they used to adorn their temples and palaces. Imagine a city where buildings shimmered with an inner light, powered by something we can only guess at today. It sounds like something straight out of a futuristic movie, doesn't it? Though, honestly, trying to light a city with glowing metal sounds a bit like trying to toast marshmallows with a supernova. Probably effective, but potentially messy. The Atlanteans, according to Plato, engineered a magnificent capital city, built in concentric circles of land and water, connected by bridges and canals. It was a marvel of civil engineering, showcasing their advanced understanding of hydraulics and urban planning. Think of Venice, but on steroids, and with a distinct lack of gondoliers singing cheesy Italian songs. This central city housed temples, palaces, and docks for their massive fleet. Their society was well ordered, with a clear hierarchy and a focus on merit. They were, in essence, the poster children for an enlightened civilization. But then, in Critias, the narrative shifts. This dialogue was meant to delve deeper into the specifics of Atlantean society and their eventual downfall, though frustratingly, Plato never completed it. It's like getting to the juiciest part of a book and realizing the last few chapters were torn out. Still, even in its unfinished state, Critias paints a vivid picture of Atlantean life and, crucially, their slow but steady moral corruption. You begin to sense a dark cloud gathering on the horizon. The initial purity and divine nature of the Atlanteans start to erode as they intermarry with mortals, and their human greed and ambition begin to overshadow their divine heritage. This, Plato suggests, is the beginning of the end. Their vast power, once used for good, became a tool for conquest and oppression. It's a classic tale, really, the powerful succumbing to their own hubris. Even today, you see echoes of this cautionary tale in historical events. Though, thankfully, most empires don't sink to the bottom of the ocean. Usually, they just get a bad Yelp review. So, as you hear Plato's words, you're left with this incredible image of a civilization that was both magnificent and tragically flawed. It's a story that asks profound questions about power, morality, and the cyclical nature of rise and fall. Was Plato simply weaving a brilliant philosophical fable to illustrate the dangers of imperial ambition and moral decay? Or was he, perhaps, transmitting a genuine, albeit embellished, memory of a real historical event? That's the core of the Atlantean mystery, a riddle wrapped in an enigma and served with a side of really old, dusty scrolls. So you're now intimately familiar with Plato's descriptions, those captivating whispers from ancient Greece that laid the groundwork for the Atlantis legend. But as you emerge from that historical haze, a new question immediately presses itself upon you. Where in the world was Atlantis? If you think about it, trying to pinpoint a lost continent based on a few ancient texts is a bit like trying to find your car keys in a parallel universe. Possible, but incredibly tricky. This question of location has arguably sparked more debate, more expeditions, and more wildly speculative theories than almost any other aspect of the Atlantis myth. You see, Plato's description, beyond the Pillars of Heracles, is both tantalizingly specific and maddeningly vague. For most of history, those pillars were understood to be the Strait of Gibraltar, the narrow bottleneck between the Iberian Peninsula and North Africa that connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea. This single geographical clue has acted like a magnetic north for Atlantologists, pulling their theories in countless directions, often with wildly different results. If you were playing a cosmic game of pin the tail on the donkey with Atlantis, you'd need a really, really big donkey and a blindfold woven from pure conjecture. Consider the Atlantic Ocean itself. This is, of course, the most intuitive and perhaps obvious candidate, given the name. Early theories often placed Atlantis somewhere in the vast expanse of the Atlantic, perhaps in the mid-Atlantic ridge, or even as a submerged landmass near the Azores or the Canary Islands. Imagine an ancient continent, now lying silent beneath miles of crushing ocean, its once proud cities slowly being reclaimed by the deep. It's a romantic notion, isn't it? The kind of place you'd expect to find mermaids lounging on forgotten pillars, casually checking their underwater smartwatches. But the Atlantic isn't the only contender. Far from it. Some audacious researchers have dragged Atlantis into the Mediterranean Sea. One particularly popular theory places it on the volcanic island of Santorini, ancient Thera, in the Aegean Sea. Around 1600 BCE, Thera experienced one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history, an event so cataclysmic it would have caused massive tsunamis and potentially devastated surrounding civilizations. If you've ever seen a picture of Santorini's caldera, you can almost feel the explosive power that once ripped it apart. This theory gained traction because of the sudden and destructive nature of the eruption, which seemed to mirror Plato's account of Atlantis being swallowed by the sea in a single dreadful day and night. Plus, there are some pretty impressive Minoan ruins on the island, hinting at a sophisticated culture that existed there. However, a mainstream historical fact is that the Minoan civilization, while advanced, was not a global maritime empire of the scale Plato described. Historians still argue whether the Thera eruption could account for all the elements of the Atlantis narrative, particularly the sheer size and imperial reach attributed to it. Then there are the truly out-there suggestions, the ones that make you raise an eyebrow and perhaps check if the speaker has had enough coffee. We are talking about locations as diverse as Ireland, the Caribbean, Antarctica. Yes, seriously, Antarctica, sometimes linked to theories of a pre-Ice Age civilization, and even various spots in South America, such as the Altiplano in Bolivia. Some have pointed to the Risha structure in Mauritania, a huge circular geological formation that, from above, eerily resembles the concentric circles Plato described for Atlantis' capital. It looks like a giant bullseye painted on the desert floor, just begging for a lost civilization to be nestled within its rings. Though, last time I checked, deserts aren't known for their thriving naval fleets, unless, of course, they had really big sand yachts. Each proposed location comes with its own set of evidence, usually a mix of geographical coincidences, archaeological finds that are then interpreted through an Atlantean lens, and often a healthy dose of wishful thinking. For instance, proponents of a Caribbean Atlantis sometimes point to submerged roads or walls like the Bimini Road, which are widely considered by geologists to be natural rock formations. It's a bit like seeing a cloud shaped like a dragon and assuming it's proof of real dragons. Very cool, but probably just a cloud. The allure of finding Atlantis, of finally putting a pin on that elusive spot on the map, is immense. Imagine the scientific breakthrough, the complete rewriting of our understanding of ancient history. It's the ultimate archaeological treasure hunt. But the very lack of a definitive location is also what allows the myth to persist and evolve. As long as we can't definitively say It was here. The door remains open for endless speculation, for new theories to emerge from the depths of scholarly research, or sometimes from the fevered dreams of intrepid explorers. The problem, of course, is that Plato's account, while detailed in some respects, lacks the kind of precise coordinates you would need for a GPS. He spoke of an island larger than Libya and Asia combined, which is an absolutely colossal landmass, far bigger than any single island we know of today. This hyperbolic description is one of the main reasons many scholars believe the story to be primarily allegorical, a narrative device rather than a historical record. If you took Plato's measurements literally, Atlantis would be so big it would probably have its own weather system, and its residents would need rocket boots just to visit their neighbors. So, as you ponder these varied locales, from the freezing grip of Antarctica to the sun-drenched Aegean, you realize that the search for Atlantis is as much a journey through the landscape of human imagination as it is a geographical quest. And it's a quest that continues, fueled by the persistent belief that somewhere, out there, beneath the waves or hidden in plain sight, lies the truth of the legendary lost continent. With your mind now swimming with possible locations for Atlantis, from the Strait of Gibraltar to the very edge of human exploration, you naturally wonder, what made this legendary civilization so extraordinary? What kind of society was it that captured Plato's imagination and has held ours for millennia? The answer, according to the ancient accounts and the myriad interpretations that followed, is a blend of unparalleled architectural grandeur and mind-boggling technological advancement. If Atlantis truly existed, it wasn't just another ancient city. It was, by all accounts, a beacon of innovation, a place where the future seemed to arrive millennia ahead of schedule. Imagine walking through the Atlantean capital. You wouldn't see dusty, sun-baked mud brick homes. Oh no, Plato described a city built in concentric rings of land and water, each ring connected by bridges wide enough for chariots, leading to a central island. Picture vast canals teeming with ships, not just for trade, but perhaps even for pleasure cruises. The architecture was reportedly astounding, with buildings crafted from black, white, and red stone, quarried directly from the island itself. This wasn't just practical. It was aesthetically brilliant, creating a striking layered appearance that would have been breathtaking. It's like someone took the best parts of Venice, Rome, and maybe a dash of Wakanda, and blended them into one super city. Though I bet even the Atlanteans had trouble finding parking for their chariots. At the very heart of this concentric city lay the Acropolis, dominated by the Temple of Poseidon. This was no ordinary temple. Plato speaks of its exterior being entirely covered in silver, with its pinnacles gilded in gold. Inside, the roof was made of ivory, gleaming with orichalcum, a mysterious reddish glowing metal, and adorned with gold and silver. There were statues of gods, and a colossal golden statue of Poseidon himself, riding 6 winged horses surrounded by 100 nereids on dolphins. Can you even imagine the sheer opulence? It sounds less like a temple and more like a high-budget fantasy film set designed by a deity with an unlimited budget. Beyond the aesthetics, the mentions of orichalcum truly spark the imagination, regarding Atlantean technology. While many scholars dismiss it as a mythical metal, its description as fire-like and gleaming has led to theories ranging from a highly conductive alloy to a primitive form of radioactive material, or even a precursor to electricity. If it was, say, a super-efficient conductor, imagine the possibilities. Instantaneous communication, incredibly bright and stable lighting, perhaps even primitive forms of automated machinery. It suggests a mastery of metallurgy and energy that far surpassed anything known in the ancient world. They weren't just chipping away at rocks, they were harnessing elements in ways we are still trying to perfect today. The hydroengineering skills of the Atlanteans also stand out. The concentric water rings weren't just pretty, they were functional. They had a sophisticated system of hot and cold springs, channeled into baths for the public, royalty, and even animals. This indicates a profound understanding of plumbing, water management, and perhaps even geothermal energy. Think of Roman baths, but on an epic scale, and probably with fewer toga-wearing philosophers debating the meaning of life while getting a back scrub. This level of infrastructure suggests a society with advanced engineering knowledge, capable of complex projects that would challenge even modern civil engineers. While Plato doesn't explicitly detail flying machines or laser guns, the sheer scale and ingenuity of what he does describe imply a society that had moved beyond basic manual labor for its most impressive feats. The construction of massive harbor basins capable of housing vast fleets, the intricate network of canals, and the monumental public works all point to organized labor, possibly advanced tools, and certainly a deep knowledge of mathematics and physics. Some interpretations even suggest the Atlanteans had a form of weather control or seismic damping technology, allowing them to mitigate natural disasters, a theory often invoked to explain why such an advanced civilization could have been wiped out by a single cataclysm, if not for its suddenness or overwhelming force. However, a mainstream historical fact is that even the most advanced ancient civilizations we do know about, like the Egyptians with their pyramids or the Romans with their aqueducts, achieved their wonders largely through immense human labor and sophisticated but mechanically simple tools. The idea of Atlantean technology on par with, or even exceeding, our own, moves firmly into the realm of speculative fiction. Historians still argue whether Plato intended these technological marvels to be literal descriptions or simply exaggerated metaphors for the peak of human achievement before moral decay. It's a bit like describing a modern smartphone to someone from the Iron Age. They'd probably think it was magic, not engineering. Yet, the persistent image of Atlantean technological prowess continues to fuel imagination. It suggests a civilization that had cracked codes we are still trying to solve, a society that perhaps had a different understanding of the natural world and its energies. This vision of advanced Atlantean technology often intertwines with the idea that remnants of their knowledge, perhaps even their devices, survived the cataclysm and influenced subsequent civilizations, sparking sudden leaps in art, architecture, or science in disparate parts of the world. It's a compelling thought, isn't it? That some of humanity's greatest unexplained leaps might have a common Atlantean origin. Having marveled at the alleged technological wonders and architectural feats of Atlantis, your mind naturally turns to the people themselves. Who were these Atlanteans? What was their daily life like? And how did their society function before the inevitable decline? Plato, in his vivid, albeit unfinished account, paints a picture of a highly structured and sophisticated civilization, one that deeply understood the principles of governance and communal living, at least initially. You see, at the very foundation of Atlantean society lay a divine lineage. Plato tells us that Poseidon, the god of the sea, fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito on the island. He created a sacred dwelling for her on a hill, surrounding it with concentric rings of water and land, essentially laying out the blueprint for the magnificent capital city. They had 5 sets of twin sons, and these 10 sons became the first rulers of Atlantis, each inheriting a portion of the island and its dominion. Atlas, the eldest, became the supreme ruler, and the entire island and surrounding ocean were named after him. It's a bit like a cosmic reality show, with Poseidon as the patriarch, setting up his divine offspring to rule a utopian paradise. Though, I bet even gods had trouble with sibling rivalries over who got the biggest slice of the pie, or in this case, the biggest ring of land. This divine heritage instilled in the early Atlanteans a profound respect for law, justice, and virtue. They lived in harmony, sharing their abundant resources and focusing on spiritual and intellectual pursuits rather than material gain. Their society was structured with a ruling class descended from Poseidon, supported by a population of skilled artisans, farmers, and soldiers. There was a clear hierarchy, but one seemingly based on merit and divine favor, rather than brute force or inherited wealth alone. Plato describes their system of governance as a form of constitutional monarchy, with the 10 kings ruling their respective districts, but ultimately bound by the laws laid down by Poseidon himself. They would meet periodically in the temple of Poseidon, offering sacrifices and deliberating on matters of state. Imagine a grand assembly, perhaps not unlike an ancient United Nations, where these powerful kings would gather, their golden and orichalcum-adorned robes shimmering to ensure the prosperity and justice of their vast empire. They had a complex system of laws, inscribed on a pillar of orichalcum within the temple, which dictated everything from their judicial proceedings to their military engagements. This suggests a highly organized legal framework, far more advanced than many contemporary societies. Their daily life, particularly for the elite, would have been one of considerable comfort and aesthetic beauty, with abundant food from their fertile lands and vast herds, and wealth flowing in from their mineral resources and trade. The Atlanteans would have had ample time for leisure, arts, and intellectual pursuits. You can picture them enjoying the elaborate bathhouses, perhaps attending philosophical debates in grand public forums, or witnessing elaborate religious ceremonies in their silver-clad temples. Their clothing might have been made from finely woven fabrics, perhaps dyed with vibrant colors, reflecting their prosperity. They were, in essence, the ancient world's VIPs, living the dream. The military structure of Atlantis was also formidable. Plato mentions a vast army and navy, capable of fielding hundreds of thousands of soldiers and thousands of ships. This formidable military was initially used for defense and to maintain order within their extensive domain. Their advanced shipbuilding techniques, likely employing their unique materials and engineering prowess, would have given them unmatched naval power. Imagine colossal triremes, possibly adorned with orichalcum, gliding effortlessly across the waves, a true display of Atlantean might. A mainstream historical fact is that ancient empires, like the Persian or Roman, also relied on vast and well-organized militaries to maintain their power, though perhaps without the benefit of glowing metal. Historians still argue whether Plato's exaggerated numbers for the Atlantean military were literal or meant to convey their overwhelming power relative to the Greeks. Beyond the grandeur of the elite, the ordinary citizens of Atlantis, the farmers who tilled the fertile soil, the miners who extracted the precious orichalcum, the artisans who crafted their beautiful objects, would have contributed to the society's immense wealth. While Plato focuses more on the ruling class, the very existence of such an advanced and prosperous civilization implies a highly efficient and productive common populace. They were the unsung heroes, the ones who made the wheels turn, probably without the luxury of hot and cold, running spring water in their homes. In essence, the early Atlantean society, as described by Plato, was a marvel of order, prosperity, and divine connection. It was a civilization that seemed to have unlocked the secrets to a harmonious existence, where spiritual values and practical governance intertwined. It was perhaps Plato's ideal state made manifest, a shining example of what humanity could achieve when guided by wisdom and virtue. But, as we'll soon discover, even divine favor and immense power couldn't shield them from the most human of failings. You have now glimpsed the dazzling ideal of Atlantean society, a divinely blessed land brimming with technological marvels, governed by wise kings descended from a god. This, my friend, was their golden age. Picture it, a time of unparalleled prosperity, a sun-drenched era when the Atlanteans truly embodied the virtues instilled in them by Poseidon. It was the peak of their civilization, a period where everything seemed to click into place, like the most satisfying puzzle you've ever completed. Imagine yourself as an Atlantean during this time. You'd wake to the gentle hum of activity in a city built with an almost impossible precision. The canals would shimmer with the rising sun, reflecting the silver and gold-clad temples. The air might carry the scent of exotic flowers from their lush gardens, or perhaps the salty tang of the sea mixed with the aroma of freshly baked bread from bustling markets. Life wouldn't be without its challenges, of course, but there was an underlying sense of order and abundance. It was the kind of place where you probably didn't have to worry about your Wi-Fi cutting out or accidentally leaving your orichalcum-powered chariot unlocked. During this golden era, the Atlanteans lived by a set of sacred laws and principles established by Poseidon himself and diligently upheld by the kings descended from him. Justice wasn't just a concept. It was woven into the fabric of their daily lives. They cultivated not only their land, but also their souls, striving for wisdom and moral excellence. Their initial focus wasn't on conquest or material greed, but on internal harmony and the benevolent stewardship of their vast domain. They understood that their immense power came with immense responsibility, a lesson many later civilizations would learn the hard way, often with devastating consequences. Their wealth derived from the island's abundant natural resources, the rich metals, the fertile soil that produced 2 harvests a year, the vast forests, was used to enhance their society and its beauty, rather than simply accumulate riches. They built magnificent bridges, harbors, and public works, all designed to serve the common good and reflect their respect for the gods. Think of the greatest architectural wonders we know: the pyramids of Egypt, the Great Wall of China, the Roman aqueducts, and then imagine them all built by a single civilization, not just for practical purposes, but also imbued with a deep spiritual significance. A mainstream historical fact is that many ancient societies experienced periods of great prosperity and cultural flourishing, often tied to abundant resources and stable governance, much like the hypothesized Atlantean Golden Age. The Atlanteans of this era were renowned for their intellectual pursuits. While Plato doesn't go into detail about their schools or philosophers, the complexity of their engineering and governance implies a society that valued learning and knowledge. You can envision scholars debating cosmic truths in marble courtyards, astronomers charting the stars from gilded observatories, and artisans perfecting their crafts with a dedication that bordered on reverence. They weren't just building beautiful things. They were building a beautiful way of life. Their interactions with other peoples would have been largely peaceful, characterized by trade and perhaps cultural exchange. Their naval supremacy meant they could command respect without necessarily resorting to force. They were the dominant power of their age, but a benevolent one, at least in the beginning. It's like being the coolest kid in school, but also the one who shares their lunch and helps everyone with their homework. A genuinely nice superpower. This period was characterized by a profound connection to their divine ancestry. The Atlanteans remembered their roots, their direct link to Poseidon. This spiritual awareness kept their ambitions in check and fostered a sense of community and shared purpose. They understood that their power was a gift, not a right, and they strove to be worthy of it. Historians still argue whether Plato intended this initial period of virtue to be a reflection of an actual historical era, or purely a literary device to contrast with their later decline. It's the classic narrative arc, the innocent beginnings before things inevitably go sideways. The emphasis on their divine lineage also meant a strong spiritual foundation for their laws and ethics. Decisions were not made lightly. They were guided by ancient precepts and interpreted by the 10 kings, who understood their role as guardians of Poseidon's legacy. This gave their society a deep stability and a moral compass that pointed squarely towards justice and righteousness. It's a rather refreshing thought in a world that often seems to prioritize profit over principles. So, as you rest your head, imagine this radiant era of Atlantis, a civilization at its zenith, basking in divine favor, its people living in harmony, their cities gleaming under a perpetually benevolent sky. It's the picture of perfection, a dream of what humanity could be. But even in this golden light, a tiny shadow, imperceptible at first, was beginning to stretch and grow. And as you'll soon see, even the most perfect golden ages are destined to eventually fade. You've just drifted through the shimmering peak of Atlantean civilization, that glorious golden age where virtue and prosperity danced hand in hand. But as you know, even the brightest light casts a shadow, and for Atlantis, that shadow was the slow, insidious creep of moral decay. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic fall, but rather a gradual erosion of their divine nature, like a magnificent statue slowly weathering in the rain. Imagine the Atlanteans, generation after generation, living in unparalleled luxury. The immense wealth, the effortless abundance, the sheer lack of external threats. These very blessings, paradoxically, became their undoing. Plato describes how, as the divine blood within them became diluted through intermarriage with mortals, their human characteristics began to dominate. Their pure spiritual essence started to fade, replaced by baser instincts. It's a classic tale, isn't it? Give humanity too much, and we often find new and creative ways to mess it up. It's like giving a child unlimited candy. Eventually, they're going to get a tummy ache, and probably a rather sticky temper. Initially, this shift was subtle. Perhaps it began with a king who preferred personal glory over communal welfare, or a council that prioritized lavish feasts over philosophical debates. The divine laws, once inscribed on orichalcum with unwavering reverence, slowly became suggestions, then guidelines, then mere historical curiosities. The Atlanteans started to value material possessions more than spiritual growth, external power more than internal wisdom. Their temples, once symbols of devout respect for Poseidon, began to feel less like sacred spaces and more like showcases for their dazzling wealth. Their immense technological prowess, which once built wonders for the common good, might have been increasingly diverted towards projects of sheer opulence, or, more dangerously, instruments of control and conquest. Think of how advanced militaries today, when unchecked, can become tools of oppression rather than defense. The glowing orichalcum, which once adorned their places of worship, might have found its way into gaudy personal trinkets or even weapons designed for domination. The shift wasn't just about individual greed. It was systemic. The kings, once benevolent guardians, began to behave like tyrants, their hearts growing full of avarice and unrighteous power. They started to use their formidable military not just for defense, but to expand their empire, to subjugate neighboring peoples, and to impose their will. The concept of might makes right replaced their earlier adherence to justice and divine law. This is where the story takes a darker turn, as you see the seeds of destruction being sown by their own hands. A mainstream historical fact is that many real-world empires, such as the Roman or British, experienced periods of moral decline and overextension, contributing to their eventual downfall. This hubris, this overweening pride in their own power and achievements, became a defining characteristic. They believed they were invincible, untouchable, beyond the reach of consequence. They forgot their divine origins, or perhaps simply stopped caring. It's like a famous celebrity who starts believing their own hype. forgetting the humility that brought them success in the first place. You can almost hear Poseidon muttering, "Oh, for heaven's sake, another empire forgetting its manners." Plato paints a vivid picture of this moral degradation. They became filled with unrighteous avarice and power and lost the sight of their true happiness. They turned away from the light, embracing the shadows of human weakness. Their cities, though still magnificent, became monuments to their vanity rather than their virtue. The once pure spring waters might have become muddied, symbolically reflecting their internal pollution. Historians still argue whether Plato intended this moral decline to be a direct cause of Atlantis' destruction, or simply a narrative device to explain why the gods would permit such a fate. Was it a divine punishment for their wickedness, or simply the inevitable result of internal rot? Regardless, the message is clear. Unchecked power and moral corruption are a dangerous cocktail. It's a cautionary tale embedded within the myth, warning against the perils of losing one's ethical compass. You can sense the growing tension, the subtle discord that began to ripple through their once harmonious society, the whispers of discontent, the subtle shift in values, the slow turn from enlightenment to self-serving ambition. These were the cracks appearing in the Atlantean foundation. They were accumulating material wealth, but losing something far more precious, their very souls. And as you'll soon find out, when you upset a god, especially one as powerful as Poseidon, things tend to go spectacularly, seismically wrong. As you now perceive the slow, unsettling descent of Atlantis into moral decay, a growing sense of unease begins to settle over you. For when humanity, even a divinely descended one, turns its back on virtue and embraces unchecked ambition, it rarely goes unnoticed by the powers that be. And in the world of Atlantis, those powers that be included the very gods who had brought them into being. So as the Atlanteans grew more arrogant, more avaricious, and more bent on imperial conquest, a mighty cosmic sigh, followed by a brewing storm, began to gather in the divine realms. Divine intervention looms. You see, Plato tells us that for a long time, the Atlanteans remained obedient to the laws and affectionate to their divine kindred. But as their mortal nature gained ascendancy over their divine heritage, they began to display unrighteous avarice and power. This shift didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was noticed. Specifically, it was noticed by the very god who had founded their lineage, Poseidon. Imagine the fatherly disappointment, amplified to a celestial scale. It's like watching your favorite child, the one you've poured all your hopes and dreams into, slowly but surely go off the rails, ignoring all your good advice and getting into trouble. Except when a god gets disappointed, the consequences are usually a bit more dramatic than just a stern talking to and being grounded from chariot riding. Plato hints at a council of the gods, a sort of divine intervention committee, perhaps located on Mount Olympus itself, where Zeus, the king of the gods, presides. This council, observing the increasingly corrupt and expansionist behavior of the Atlanteans, deliberated on their fate. The primary concern was the Atlanteans' growing hubris and their attempts to subjugate other nations, particularly the Proto-Athenians, Plato's idealized ancient Greeks. This wasn't just about internal moral failing. It was about the Atlanteans disrupting the cosmic order and threatening the balance of power on Earth. They were essentially becoming celestial bullies. The particular focus on Zeus is significant. As the god of justice and order, Zeus would not tolerate such rampant unrighteousness indefinitely. His patience, much like a parent's with an unruly teenager, would eventually wear thin. Plato states that Zeus, perceiving that the race of the Atlanteans was in a most wretched state, decided to punish them. This wasn't an act of petty vengeance, but a necessary correction, a divine rebalancing of the scales of justice. It was a clear message. There are consequences for arrogance, even for those who claim divine ancestry. The idea of divine retribution for human wickedness is a mainstream historical fact found in countless ancient myths and religious texts across diverse cultures. Think of the biblical flood narrative or the numerous tales of gods punishing cities for their sins in Greek mythology. Historians still argue whether Plato intended this divine punishment to be a literal event or a symbolic representation of natural forces reacting to human imbalance, a kind of cosmic karma. Regardless, the narrative serves as a powerful moral lesson. It's a reminder that even if you're living in a city made of glowing metal, you can't escape accountability for your actions. You can almost feel the tension building in the narrative as the gods deliberate. The Atlanteans, blinded by their wealth and power, continue their arrogant path, oblivious to the divine eye watching their every move. They were too busy conquering new territories and building grander monuments to their own vanity to notice the celestial storm clouds gathering overhead. It's a classic case of not seeing the forest for the gold-plated trees. This impending divine judgment serves as a pivotal turning point in the Atlantis story. It shifts the narrative from a tale of a magnificent civilization to a cautionary fable about the perils of pride and the consequences of moral decay. The Atlanteans had forgotten their true calling, forgotten the virtues that had once made them great, and in doing so, they had sealed their own fate. Their beautiful, technologically advanced world was about to face a reckoning, not from an invading army, but from the very forces of nature and divine will that they had come to disrespect. The narrative from Plato suggests that Zeus intended this punishment not just as a destructive act, but as a teaching moment, a severe lesson for the Atlanteans, and by extension, for all of humanity. It was meant to bring them back to their senses, or, failing that, to remove them from the stage so that the rest of the world could find its balance again. It's a harsh form of tough love, wouldn't you say? Especially when tough love involves wiping an entire continent off the map. So as you listen, you can almost hear the rumble of divine displeasure, the subtle shifting of cosmic gears. The stage is set for the inevitable, for the cataclysmic event that will forever enshrine Atlantis in the annals of mystery. The Atlanteans, in their hubris, had challenged the very heavens, and the heavens, it seems, were about to answer. You felt the growing tension, the cosmic sighs of divine displeasure, as the Atlanteans plunged deeper into moral decay. Now, as the divine judgment hangs heavy in the air, you begin to sense the physical world itself responding to this imbalance. The stage is set, not just for a storm, but for a full-blown geological meltdown, the cataclysmic event foreshadowed. Plato's account, particularly in Critias, doesn't just jump straight to the destruction. There's a palpable build-up, a sense of impending doom that permeates the narrative once the gods, especially Zeus, decide on their course of action. It's like watching a dark cloud grow on the horizon, knowing full well it's not just a passing shower. The air might grow heavy, the ground might subtly tremble, or strange phenomena could begin to occur, signaling that something profound and terrifying is about to happen. Think about it. When the gods are displeased, their anger often manifests through the very elements. Poseidon, the sea god, was also the earth shaker, associated with earthquakes and tsunamis. If you've ever felt the ground shake, even mildly, you know the primal fear it can evoke. Now amplify that to a scale capable of swallowing a continent. The divine decision wasn't just a decree. It was a cosmic trigger pulled, setting in motion the geological forces that would bring Atlantis to its knees. The nature of this foreshadowing is largely implied rather than explicitly detailed by Plato. He focuses more on the reason for the destruction, divine judgment for moral corruption, and the result, the sinking of the island, rather than a blow-by-blow account of the early tremors. However, common interpretations and expansions of the myth often include a period of increasing seismic activity. Imagine minor earthquakes, at first dismissed by the complacent Atlanteans as mere inconveniences. Perhaps fissures might have begun to appear in the ground, or their sophisticated water systems, once so pristine, might have begun to show signs of disruption. It's hard to ignore a crack running through your solid gold pavement, isn't it? Though, knowing humanity, someone probably tried to patch it with a bigger, flashier piece of orichalcum. Beyond tremors, you might imagine unusual weather patterns. Perhaps the skies grew ominously dark, or the seas, usually so docile under Atlantean command, became increasingly tempestuous, with rogue waves crashing against their once impenetrable harbors. The animals, often more attuned to the Earth's subtle shifts, might have exhibited strange behaviors, sensing the impending catastrophe long before the humans fully grasped its magnitude. It's the kind of subtle dread that builds in a horror movie. Before the jump scare, only this jump scare involves an entire civilization disappearing. The very concept of a divine punishment manifesting as a natural disaster is a mainstream historical fact found across numerous cultures and mythologies. From the global flood narratives to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, ancient peoples often attributed cataclysmic events to the wrath of offended deities. Historians still argue whether such myths are purely allegorical or rooted in the memory of real, though perhaps exaggerated, natural disasters. For instance, the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations around 1200 BCE, often attributed to a combination of climate change, earthquakes, and social unrest, shows how complex natural and human factors can combine to bring down mighty societies. So, while Plato doesn't give us a specific timeline of the foreshadowing, the implication is clear. The divine wheels were turning, and the earth itself was preparing to deliver the gods' judgment. The Atlanteans, in their hubris and self-absorption, were perhaps too engrossed in their own affairs to read the signs, or simply chose to ignore them. It's a sobering thought. Even with all their advanced technology and understanding of nature, they failed to heed the most fundamental warnings. They were too busy admiring their reflection in polished orichalcum to notice the ground literally falling out from under them. The stage is now set. The moral decay has reached its zenith. The divine patience has run out, and the very ground beneath Atlantis is beginning to groan in anticipation. You can almost feel the vibrations through your bed, a distant rumble that grows steadily louder. The golden age has ended, the shadows have lengthened, and the final devastating act is about to commence. It will be, as Plato grimly described, one dreadful day and night. The air crackles with an ominous energy now, a palpable stillness before the storm. You felt the subtle tremors, sensed the divine displeasure, and now, without warning, the world as the Atlanteans knew it is about to come to a shattering cataclysmic end. This, my friend, is the day the earth moved. Plato's description of Atlantis's final moments is chillingly concise, yet utterly devastating. It was swallowed by the sea in a single dreadful day and night. Imagine that. Not a slow, creeping erosion, not a gradual subsidence, but an immediate, violent obliteration. It's the kind of thing that sends shivers down your spine, even now, thousands of years later. One moment, a gleaming, advanced civilization. The next, nothing but churning waves. It's like someone hit the cosmic delete button, and there was no undo option. You're there, standing on the edge of the capital city, perhaps looking out at the vast Atlantic. The subtle tremors you might have felt earlier are now escalating into violent, ground-rending quakes. The very earth beneath your feet bucks and heaves like a wild beast. Buildings, even those massive structures of black, white, and red stone, groan and crack, fissures appearing in their polished surfaces. Orichalcum, once gleaming with an internal light, might now glow erratically, then plunge into darkness as power systems fail. The ground splits open, swallowing streets and homes whole. Imagine the terrifying roars of the earth as it rips itself apart, the screams of a populace caught utterly unprepared, despite any faint warnings. The sophisticated hydraulic systems that channeled hot and cold springs, once Atlantean triumphs, now rupture, sending torrents of water erupting from the ground, adding to the chaos. But the real terror comes from the sea. As the landmass shifts and sinks, massive tsunamis are unleashed, colossal walls of water rising from the ocean depths. These aren't just big waves. They are monstrous liquid mountains, sweeping over the land with unimaginable force. The Atlantean Navy, once the pride of their empire, becomes utterly insignificant, their grand ships splintered like matchsticks against the relentless onslaught. Imagine trying to outrun a wall of water taller than the tallest temple, moving at the speed of a jet plane. You can't. The concentric circles of the capital, once a symbol of order and ingenuity, now become a death trap as the canals overflow, merge, and consume the land rings. The very waters that once brought prosperity now bring destruction. The glorious temple of Poseidon, covered in silver and gold, crumbles and is dragged down, its golden statue of the sea god perhaps sinking first, a grim irony. A mainstream historical fact is that catastrophic geological events, such as massive volcanic eruptions and the tsunamis they generate, can dramatically alter landscapes and destroy entire settlements in a very short period. For instance, the eruption of Krakatoa in 1883 caused tsunamis that killed tens of thousands and reshaped the surrounding islands. Historians still argue whether Plato's account is a mythological amplification of such a real-world event or purely a work of philosophical fiction. It's truly difficult to imagine a civilization of that scale vanishing so completely, so quickly. Unless, of course, they had really bad insurance policies that didn't cover acts of divine wrath. The night part of Plato's description suggests more than just the passage of time. It implies a descent into darkness, perhaps due to volcanic ash blotting out the sun, or simply the overwhelming despair of an entire continent vanishing into the abyss. The fires ignited by the quakes would mingle with the water, steam rising in chaotic plumes, and the very air would be thick with dust and the acrid smell of destruction. This wasn't just a city sinking. It was an entire island continent. The scale of the catastrophe is almost unimaginable. The land itself, once stable and fertile, fragmented and subsided, pulled down into the depths of the ocean. The geological forces at play would have been immense, perhaps involving a massive fault line rupture or a cataclysmic collapse of a volcanic caldera that led to the island's submersion. And then silence. A vast, echoing silence, broken only by the lapping of waves over what was once a vibrant, bustling civilization. The sea, Poseidon's realm, had reclaimed what it had once helped create, burying Atlantis forever beneath its surface. The very location of the island, beyond the Pillars of Heracles, was now marked by impassable mud shoals, a lasting testament to its disappearance, and a warning to any who might try to sail over its watery grave. It's a rather effective do not disturb sign, wouldn't you say? So as you picture this dreadful day and night, you realize the immense power of nature and perhaps of divine will. The glittering spires, the advanced technology, the powerful empire, all reduced to rubble and swallowed by the indifferent sea. Atlantis, the magnificent, was gone, leaving behind only whispers and the most enduring of mysteries. Continues section 11. You've just considered the tantalizing possibility of Atlantean survivors spreading their knowledge like scattered seeds across the ancient world. Now, let's widen our gaze even further, beyond direct physical influence, and delve into the deep, murky waters of human storytelling. You'll find that the legend of Atlantis doesn't exist in a vacuum. It resonates with a multitude of echoes in ancient myths from virtually every corner of the globe. It's almost as if humanity collectively remembers a great loss, a catastrophic event that shaped the dawn of civilization. Think about the ubiquitous Great Flood narratives, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the biblical story of Noah's Ark. Countless cultures across continents describe a period when the world was engulfed by water, wiping out humanity, save for a select few. The details vary wildly, of course. The reason for the flood, the chosen survivors, the animals saved, the type of vessel. But the core narrative, a global deluge as divine retribution or a natural cleansing, is strikingly consistent. Is it possible that these disparate myths are all distant, distorted memories of the same cataclysmic event, perhaps the very sinking of Atlantis? It's a question that keeps ethnologists and mythographers up at night, probably trying to decipher ancient texts by flashlight. Consider the Sumerian and Babylonian flood myths, like the story of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which predates the biblical account by centuries. Here, a god warns a righteous man to build a boat to save himself and all living creatures from a devastating flood intended to wipe out humanity. The similarities to Noah's Ark are undeniable, leading many to believe in a common ancient Near Eastern origin. If Atlantis truly sank due to geological upheaval and massive tsunamis, perhaps the memory of such an event rippled outwards, inspiring these foundational myths. A mainstream historical fact is that many flood myths are indeed linked to regional post-glacial flooding events or major riverine overflows that would have been devastating to early agricultural societies. Beyond the Middle East, you find similar narratives in diverse traditions. The ancient Greeks had their own flood myth involving Deucalion and Pyrrha, where Zeus sends a great deluge to punish humanity for its wickedness. Only Deucalion and his wife survive, building an ark and repopulating the earth. In Hindu mythology, the story of Manu and the Matsya avatar describes a fish, an avatar of Vishnu, warning Manu of a great flood and instructing him to build a boat. Even the Norse sagas speak of a great flood that occurred when the giant Ymir was slain, and his blood covered the world. It's like everyone, everywhere, at some point, had a really, really bad day involving a lot of water. Then there are the lost land myths, tales of islands or continents that sank beneath the waves. The Celtic legends speak of Lyonesse, a rich and fertile land off the coast of Cornwall that was swallowed by the sea. Pacific Islanders tell of various sunken islands, often due to divine displeasure or geological shifts. The Japanese have legends of a lost land of Mu, though this often gets intertwined with more modern esoteric theories, which we'll touch on later. These aren't always global floods, but they share the theme of a technologically or culturally advanced land suddenly vanishing. It's almost as if the collective human subconscious has a missing landmass file cabinet. The striking parallels across these diverse myths beg a deeper question. Do they represent independent cultural developments, reflecting humanity's universal experience with floods and the destructive power of nature? Or are they, as some propose, fragmented memories of a singular, truly global, or at least continent-altering cataclysm, the very event that consumed Atlantis? Historians still argue whether the similarities in these myths point to a shared ancient human experience or a diffusion from a single historical event or cultural source. The argument for a connection to Atlantis hinges on the idea that Plato's detailed account, far from being an isolated invention, was merely one of the clearest and most elaborate retellings of a widespread tradition. If survivors of Atlantis spread across the globe, as we discussed in the last section, their tales of a lost, advanced civilization and its watery demise could have seeded these myriad flood and lost land myths, adapting to local cultures and deities over time. It would explain why, for example, The Peruvian flood myth of Unu Pachacuti and the Chinese myth of Yu the Great, while distinct, share a common thread of a world overwhelmed by water. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it, that when you hear a story about a great flood, you might actually be hearing a faint echo of the final terrifying moments of Atlantis. It reminds you that history, both real and mythical, is a vast interconnected tapestry, and the threads of ancient cataclysms weave their way through countless human narratives. And in the quiet of the night, as you listen to these echoes, you might almost hear the distant roar of the waves that swallowed a world. You've just explored how the Atlantis myth reverberates through the ancient flood tales and lost land legends of humanity. A fascinating thought. But now, let's pivot from the realm of myth and turn our gaze towards the cold, hard facts of science. If Atlantis truly vanished beneath the waves, what geological explanations could possibly account for such a colossal event? Could the Earth itself, in its vast, indifferent power, be the destroyer Plato described? You see, the Earth is a far more dynamic and volatile place than we often imagine. Its surface is not a static, unchanging shell, but a mosaic of massive tectonic plates, constantly grinding, colliding, and pulling apart. This geological dance is responsible for earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the slow, majestic rise and fall of continents over millions of years. For Atlantis to vanish in a single dreadful day and night, the geological event would need to be both incredibly powerful and incredibly rapid. One of the leading geological theories, often considered as a potential explanation for any sudden land disappearance, is massive volcanic activity. We touched on Santorini, Thera, earlier, and it remains a prime candidate for a geological event that could inspire such a myth. When a supervolcano erupts, it doesn't just spew ash and lava. It can cause the entire landmass above its magma chamber to collapse inwards, creating a caldera. If this happens to an island or coastal area, the result would be catastrophic tsunamis generated by the displacement of vast amounts of water, followed by the complete submergence of the land. Imagine the enormous caldera left by the Toba eruption, or the immense power of the Yellowstone supervolcano, scaled to encompass an island the size of Plato's Atlantis. A mainstream historical fact is that caldera-forming eruptions are well-documented geological phenomena, capable of causing localized but devastating land subsidence and tsunamis. However, historians still argue whether the scale of the Thera eruption, while immense, truly matches Plato's description of an island larger than Libya and Asia combined. That would require a caldera collapse on a planetary scale, which is simply not supported by the geological record. But perhaps Plato was using hyperbole, or the story evolved over time, exaggerating the scale of a very real but smaller volcanic catastrophe. Another powerful geological explanation involves subduction zones and massive earthquakes. Along subduction zones, one tectonic plate slides beneath another, a process that can lead to incredibly powerful megathrust earthquakes. If such an earthquake were to occur off the coast of a large island or continent, it could cause massive landslides, liquefaction of soil, and crucially, the rapid subsidence of land. Imagine a section of the Earth's crust suddenly dropping several hundred feet or even miles, dragging a populated landmass with it. The resulting tsunamis would be truly biblical in scale, engulfing entire coastlines and sweeping across oceans. Some theories also point to the possibility of a catastrophic methane hydrate release. Methane hydrates are ice-like compounds found in vast quantities on ocean floors. If tectonic activity or rising ocean temperatures destabilize these hydrates, they can rapidly convert into gas, creating enormous underwater explosions and causing large sections of the continental shelf to collapse. This would generate monstrous tsunamis and potentially cause islands or coastal regions to sink. It's a bit like the ocean floor suddenly turning into a gigantic, unstable soda bottle that someone just shook vigorously. Then there's the long-term process of isostatic adjustment or subsidence. Land masses can slowly rise or fall over geological time due to changes in ice sheets, post-glacial rebound, or sediment loading. While this is typically a very slow process, a sudden, rapid acceleration due to an underlying geological instability could, theoretically, cause swift subsidence. However, a speed sufficient to sink an entire continent in a day and night stretches the bounds of known geological processes. The challenge for all these geological theories, when applied to Atlantis, is the sheer scale and suddenness described by Plato. While individual events like volcanic eruptions or earthquakes can be incredibly destructive, a single event capable of submerging an entire continent beyond the Pillars of Heracles without leaving a clear, undeniable geological signature remains elusive. If such an enormous landmass disappeared, the geological evidence, massive fault lines, extensive volcanic fields, or vast underwater plateaus with telltale signs of former dry land should be unmistakable. And yet, for a location the size Plato described, there isn't a widely accepted, definitive geological smoking gun. However, the continued advancements in ocean floor mapping and remote sensing technologies keep hope alive for some researchers. The ocean depths are still largely unexplored, and who knows what geological secrets they might hold. Perhaps there is a submerged plateau, once an island, whose collapse was indeed triggered by an extraordinary confluence of geological forces. It's an intriguing thought that somewhere beneath the vast blue, the Earth's own history might hold the key to this ancient mystery, silently waiting to be discovered. You've just considered the formidable geological forces that could potentially swallow a continent, bringing us closer to understanding the how of Atlantis' demise. But understanding the mechanism isn't the same as finding the evidence. So with the lingering question of Atlantis' existence, the world's most intrepid minds, both amateur and professional, have embarked on countless archaeological quests to unearth its secrets. It's a treasure hunt of epic proportions, driven by the tantalizing possibility of rewriting human history. Imagine yourself as one of these explorers, perhaps in a dusty library poring over ancient maps, or donning a wetsuit to plunge into the ocean depths. The quest for Atlantis isn't confined to a single location, given the myriad theories we've discussed. Every proposed site, from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, has attracted its share of dedicated searchers, often leading to fascinating discoveries. even if they don't always point conclusively to Atlantis. One of the most famous and persistent archaeological quests centers around the island of Santorini, or ancient Thera, in the Aegean Sea. As we discussed, its catastrophic Bronze Age volcanic eruption around 1600 BCE perfectly matches the single dreadful day and night narrative. The archaeological site of Akrotiri, preserved under layers of volcanic ash, much like Pompeii, reveals a highly sophisticated Minoan city with multi-story buildings, elaborate frescoes, and advanced plumbing. This discovery was, and remains, a mainstream historical fact, showcasing a complex and vibrant culture that flourished in the Aegean long before classical Greece. It truly was a significant Bronze Age urban center. However, historians still argue whether the scale of the Minoan civilization, while impressive, aligns with Plato's description of a vast, continent-spanning maritime empire that conquered parts of Europe and Africa. Akrotiri was certainly advanced, but its reach doesn't seem to match the colossal power attributed to Atlantis. Despite this, the Thera-Akrotiri connection remains a cornerstone for many who believe the Atlantis myth has a historical basis, arguing that Plato exaggerated the details but was inspired by a real event. Another key area of exploration has been the Bimini Road off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas. Discovered in 1968, this underwater formation consists of thousands of perfectly aligned limestone blocks stretching for hundreds of meters. To some, it immediately screamed Atlantean Road or Harbor Wall, suggesting submerged ancient architecture. Divers and proponents of a Caribbean Atlantis flocked to the site, convinced they had found definitive proof. The perfectly straight lines and right angles seemed too regular to be natural. However, extensive geological and archaeological studies, which are mainstream scientific facts, have largely concluded that the Bimini Road is a natural geological formation known as beach rock. This occurs when sand and shell fragments are cemented together by calcium carbonate, forming hard, flat slabs that can break into regular, pavement-like patterns through erosion. It's a bit like seeing interesting cloud shapes. They look like something, but they're still just clouds. While it's a fascinating natural wonder, it hasn't held up as definitive proof of submerged ancient cities, much to the disappointment of those hoping for a Caribbean Atlantis. Exploration in the Atlantic Ocean, particularly around the Azores, Canary Islands, and even off the coast of Spain, has also been ongoing. Researchers using sonar and submersible technology have searched for telltale signs of submerged land masses or artificial structures. There have been reports, often unconfirmed, of geometric shapes or unusual formations on the seabed. For example, some have pointed to the Azores Triple Junction, a complex geological area where three tectonic plates meet, suggesting that immense seismic activity here could have caused a significant landmass to sink. But so far, no undeniable evidence of a sunken city or continent has emerged that would satisfy the broader scientific community. The quest isn't just about finding drowned cities. It's also about interpreting anomalous artifacts or historical records. Some researchers delve into ancient texts from cultures all over the world, seeking patterns or clues that might point to a common forgotten origin. Others analyze geological data, looking for evidence of rapid, large-scale land subsidence in specific areas that might align with the beyond the pillars of Heracles description. It's a true interdisciplinary pursuit involving oceanographers, geologists, archaeologists, and even linguists. Despite the passionate efforts and numerous expeditions, no archaeological discovery has definitively proven the existence of Atlantis as described by Plato. The lack of concrete, undeniable evidence often leads mainstream archaeology to categorize Atlantis as a powerful myth or allegory, rather than a lost historical place. It's a tough crowd, the scientific community. They tend to prefer actual ruins over really compelling stories. And perhaps that's for the best. We wouldn't want to accidentally declare someone's ancient backyard a lost continent just because it had a surprisingly well-preserved bird bath. But the search continues. The allure of Atlantis is simply too strong to resist. Every new underwater drone, every deeper submersible, every advanced sonar scan sparks renewed hope. For many, the absence of proof isn't proof of absence, and the possibility, however slim, that a lost civilization lies waiting in the deep continues to drive these tireless quests. You've just seen how archaeological quests, despite their passion, have yet to deliver definitive proof of a drowned Atlantis. But the story of Atlantis isn't solely confined to ancient texts, geological theories, or underwater expeditions. Its enigma has also seeped into the realms of mysticism, spiritualism, and alternative history, giving rise to numerous esoteric interpretations that offer a completely different lens through which to view this lost civilization. These interpretations often go far beyond Plato's original account, weaving Atlantis into grand cosmic narratives of human evolution, consciousness, and hidden knowledge. Imagine moving beyond the strictures of conventional history and archaeology into a world where ancient wisdom traditions, psychic readings, and spiritual revelations are taken as valid sources of information. In this realm, Atlantis isn't just a place. It's a profound spiritual concept, a former peak of human consciousness that we are destined to rediscover or re-attain. It's like switching from a highly detailed technical manual to a beautifully illustrated but wildly speculative fantasy novel. One of the most influential figures in the esoteric interpretation of Atlantis was Helena Blavatsky, a co-founder of Theosophy in the late 19th century. Blavatsky, through her concept of root races, proposed that humanity evolves through distinct stages, with the Atlanteans being the fourth root race, preceding our current Aryan fifth root race. She described them as possessing incredible psychic abilities, telepathy, and a deep understanding of cosmic energies. According to her, the Atlanteans eventually misused these powers for selfish ends, leading to their cataclysmic destruction. This echoes Plato's moral decay theme, but amplifies it to a spiritual karmic level. It's a bit like giving a super advanced species access to universal energy, only for them to turn it into a giant mind-controlled pizza oven. Building on Blavatsky's ideas, another prominent figure, Edgar Cayce, often called the Sleeping Prophet, offered incredibly detailed psychic readings about Atlantis in the early to mid-20th century. Cayce's readings described Atlantis as a technologically advanced civilization that used a powerful crystal, the Firestone or Great Crystal, as an energy source, capable of generating power, levitation, and even interdimensional travel. He spoke of the Atlanteans having sophisticated airships and manipulating energies for various purposes. According to Casey, their misuse of this Firestone technology, particularly for destructive ends, led to a series of cataclysms, culminating in the final sinking. He even pinpointed specific dates for these destructions and suggested that remnants of Atlantean records would be discovered in places like Bimini, Egypt, and the Yucatan. Predictions that have fueled many modern archaeological quests. A mainstream historical fact is that Edgar Casey established a foundation and gained a significant following for his psychic abilities, though his readings are not recognized as historical evidence by academic institutions. These esoteric interpretations often integrate Atlantis into broader narratives about ancient astronauts, lost continents like Mu or Lemuria, and a universal hidden history of humanity. They propose that certain ancient monuments, like the Egyptian pyramids or Mayan temples, were either built by Atlanteans or by their direct descendants, embodying a forgotten Atlantean science or spiritual knowledge. The idea is that these ancient structures are not just tombs or temples, but repositories of Atlantean wisdom, perhaps even power generators. The concept of Akashic records is also prevalent in esoteric Atlantean lore. These are thought to be a universal library of all knowledge, past, present, and future, encoded in a non-physical plane of existence. Through psychic access to these records, individuals claim to have remembered their past lives in Atlantis or gained insights into its technologies and spiritual practices. It's like having a cosmic Wikipedia, but instead of typing in queries, you just feel them. For those who adhere to these interpretations, Atlantis is more than just a historical place. It's a living memory, a powerful archetype representing a golden age of human potential and the dangers of its misuse. The sinking of Atlantis is seen as a profound lesson for humanity, a warning about the perils of technological advancement without spiritual wisdom or power without responsibility. It's a narrative that appeals to our innate desire for a deeper, more mystical past, one where humanity was capable of extraordinary feats, both good and ill. While mainstream academia generally dismisses these interpretations as pseudo-history or spiritual fantasy, their influence on popular culture and New Age movements is undeniable. Historians still argue whether the persistent belief in Atlantis and its esoteric interpretations reflects a universal longing for a mythical golden age, or if there is some deep, unconscious memory of a lost past embedded within the human psyche that these interpretations tap into. It is a fascinating area where science and spirituality diverge, yet often mirror each other in their search for meaning and origin. So, as you ponder these mystical visions of Atlantis, with its glowing crystals and psychic powers, you realize that the story is not just about what might have been, but also about what we, as humans, choose to believe, and the endless ways we try to connect with a lost, perhaps divinely inspired, past. You've just taken a fascinating detour into the esoteric interpretations of Atlantis, where crystals glow and psychic powers abound. Now, let's bring our journey back to a more familiar landscape, one where the whispers of Atlantis are not found in ancient scrolls or psychic readings, but on the silver screen, in the pages of novels, and across countless digital platforms. You'll find that the legend of Atlantis has profoundly shaped and permeated Atlantis in pop culture, becoming an enduring archetype in modern storytelling. Think about the sheer volume of movies, books, video games, and even comic books that feature Atlantis. It's truly astounding. The myth has proven to be incredibly fertile ground for creative minds, offering a perfect blend of mystery, lost technology, and a cautionary tale. It allows storytellers to explore themes of utopian societies, advanced civilizations, catastrophic destruction, and the enduring human quest for discovery. It's the kind of story that just begs for a Hollywood blockbuster, complete with impressive CGI and a brooding hero. One of the earliest and most iconic cinematic portrayals was the 1961 film Atlantis, The Lost Continent, which, true to the era, featured giant, mind-controlled sea monsters and a rather villainous Atlantean king. Fast forward to the 21st century, and Disney's animated film Atlantis, The Lost Empire, 2001, offered a visually stunning interpretation, complete with a unique language, advanced crystal technology, and a more benevolent, indigenous Atlantean population. It took the classic myth and gave it a vibrant, adventurous twist, proving that even a lost continent can have a surprisingly cheerful soundtrack. In literature, the references are countless. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Seas, 1870, sees Captain Nemo and the Nautilus crew discover the ruins of Atlantis beneath the ocean, a poignant and evocative scene that cemented its place in adventure fiction. H.P. Lovecraft, the master of cosmic horror, hinted at Atlantean ruins and dark, antediluvian knowledge in his Cthulhu mythos, giving Atlantis a chilling elder god twist. More recently, authors like Clive Cussler have built entire adventure series around the search for Atlantis and its secrets, blending archaeological thrills with high-stakes espionage. It seems every adventurer with a submarine and a thirst for ancient mysteries eventually points their compass towards the legendary isle. Video games, with their ability to create immersive worlds, have also embraced Atlantis with open arms. From early adventure games where you explored submerged ruins, to modern RPGs where Atlantean technology might be a source of incredible power or a dangerous weapon, the myth provides a rich backdrop. Imagine navigating the eerie silent remnants of a once grand city, solving puzzles left behind by a forgotten civilization, or even wielding weapons powered by the enigmatic orichalcum. The potential for interactive storytelling is immense, especially if you get to fight a grumpy kraken along the way. The enduring popularity of Atlantis in pop culture isn't just about cool lost cities and advanced tech. It's also about the themes it explores. The story of a powerful civilization brought down by its own moral failings resonates deeply with modern anxieties about unchecked technological progress, environmental destruction, and the corrupting influence of power. It serves as a potent allegory for our own potential pitfalls, a cautionary tale dressed up in ancient mystery. A mainstream historical fact is that myths and legends often serve as powerful cultural narratives, reflecting societal values, fears, and aspirations across different eras. Historians still argue whether the continuous popularization of Atlantis enhances or detracts from serious historical and archaeological inquiry. On one hand, it keeps the public fascinated by ancient mysteries and archaeological discovery. On the other, the wild exaggerations and fantastical elements often found in pop culture can sometimes blur the lines between genuine historical research and pure fantasy, making it harder for the average person to discern fact from fiction. It's a bit like trying to learn about real dinosaurs from watching Jurassic Park. Entertaining, but perhaps not entirely accurate for a dissertation. Yet there's no denying the power of these cultural touchstones. They keep the legend alive, introducing new generations to the mystery and inspiring many to delve deeper into its origins, whether through academic study or independent research. Every time a new Atlantean movie is released, or a novel about its secrets hits the shelves, the myth gains new life, adding another layer to its already complex tapestry. So, as you drift towards sleep, consider how this ancient Greek story, passed down by Plato, has transcended its origins to become a global phenomenon. It's a testament to the enduring human fascination with what is lost, what is possible, and what lessons might still be hidden beneath the waves, waiting for us to find them. Perhaps not with a sonar, but with a story. You've just explored how Atlantis has conquered the realm of pop culture, proving that a good mystery never truly fades. But as you reflect on its pervasive presence, you naturally begin to ponder the deeper reasons behind its enduring grip on the human imagination. Why does the legend of Atlantis, despite its lack of concrete proof, continue to captivate us, fueling countless books, films, and endless debates? It's because it embodies the enduring power of myth. You see, myths are far more than just ancient stories or fantastical tales. They are profound narratives that often tap into universal human experiences, fears, and aspirations. They provide frameworks for understanding the world, our place within it, and the moral lessons that guide our lives. Atlantis is a prime example of such a powerful myth, resonating on multiple levels that transcend simple historical inquiry. Firstly, Atlantis speaks to our innate fascination with the lost and unknown. There's something inherently thrilling about the idea of a vanished civilization, a glorious past that lies just beyond our grasp. It sparks our curiosity, fueling the explorer within us. We long to uncover secrets, to peel back the layers of time and discover what once was. It's like finding a mysterious, locked antique box. You simply have to know what's inside, even if it's just a really old receipt. Secondly, the Atlantis myth embodies the concept of a golden age. Nearly every culture has a narrative of a perfect, primordial time when humanity lived in harmony with nature and the divine before a fall from grace. Atlantis, with its descriptions of advanced technology, wise governance, and spiritual purity, perfectly fits this archetype. It represents a lost Eden, a dream of human perfection that, though unattainable now, offers a blueprint for what we can be. This yearning for a simpler, purer, more enlightened past is a powerful human driver. A mainstream historical fact is that the concept of a golden age is a recurring motif in various mythologies and philosophical traditions worldwide, from Hesiod's Ages of Man to indigenous creation stories. Thirdly, Atlantis serves as a powerful cautionary tale. Plato's narrative explicitly links the civilization's downfall to its moral decay, its shift from virtue to avarice and hubris. This resonates deeply with timeless anxieties about the corrupting influence of power, unchecked technological advancement, and environmental destruction. In an age grappling with climate change, artificial intelligence, and global conflicts, the story of Atlantis offers a potent reminder. Even the most advanced societies are vulnerable if they lose their ethical compass. It's a cosmic "I told you so," wrapped in a dramatic natural disaster. And let's be honest, we humans rarely seem to learn these lessons the first time around. Moreover, the very ambiguity surrounding Atlantis enhances its mythical power. The fact that its existence remains unproven allows for endless speculation and interpretation. It can be a historical place, a philosophical allegory, a spiritual teaching, or a sci-fi playground, all at once. This fluidity allows people from diverse backgrounds to connect with the story on their own terms, projecting their hopes, fears, and beliefs onto its enigmatic form. Historians still argue whether Plato intended the story of Atlantis to be a genuine historical account, or primarily a philosophical allegory designed to illustrate political and moral concepts. This ongoing scholarly debate further contributes to the myth's enduring allure. The allure also lies in the promise of lost knowledge. If Atlantis was indeed technologically and spiritually advanced, then its rediscovery could unlock secrets that transform our understanding of history, science, or even consciousness. This taps into the human desire for progress and the belief that answers to our current challenges might lie hidden in the forgotten wisdom of the past. It's the ultimate cheat code for humanity. If only we could find it. Finally, the sheer scale and drama of the Atlantean narrative, a magnificent island swallowed by the sea in a single day and night, appeals to our sense of wonder and terror. It's a story of ultimate consequence, of hubris meeting its inescapable fate. Such grand narratives evoke powerful emotions and leave a lasting impression, embedding themselves deep within our collective psyche. So, as you rest and reflect, consider that the persistent whisper of Atlantis is more than just a historical curiosity. It is a testament to the enduring human need for stories that explain our past, warn us about our present, and inspire our future. It's a myth that, precisely because it remains unsolved, continues to hold a mirror up to our greatest achievements and our deepest flaws, echoing through the ages, perpetually waiting for us to truly understand its lessons. You've just pondered the enduring power of the Atlantis myth itself, how it speaks to our deepest fascinations and fears. Now, let's hone in on the core message embedded within Plato's dramatic narrative, the profound lessons from a lost civilization. For Atlantis, whether fact or fable, serves as a powerful cautionary tale, a timeless moral compass for any society grappling with power, prosperity, and the delicate balance of human nature. Imagine Plato in ancient Athens using the story of Atlantis not merely to entertain, but to educate. He wasn't just spinning a yarn, he was imparting critical insights into the rise and fall of civilizations, drawing a stark contrast between an idealized, virtuous state, represented by early Atlantis and ancient Athens, and one corrupted by excess. It's like a really elaborate PowerPoint presentation from antiquity, with much better special effects, namely, an entire continent sinking. The most prominent lesson, whispered through the ages, is the peril of unchecked ambition and hubris. The Atlanteans, once content with their divine blessings and vast resources, became consumed by a lust for power and conquest. Their imperialistic tendencies led them to invade other lands, including the legendary Proto-Athens. This unchecked expansion, driven by avarice, directly resulted in their divine punishment. It's a classic reminder that power, when wielded without wisdom or restraint, inevitably leads to destruction, not just for others, but for oneself. A mainstream historical fact is that numerous empires throughout history, from the Roman to the Napoleonic, have suffered from overextension and internal decay caused by excessive ambition. Secondly, Atlantis teaches us about the corrupting influence of wealth and material excess. In their golden age, the Atlanteans used their immense riches to build a beautiful, harmonious society. But as they declined, their focus shifted from spiritual and communal well-being to personal indulgence and ostentatious displays of wealth. The glittering orichalcum became a symbol of their vanity, not their virtue. This resonates deeply even today, reminding us that true prosperity isn't just about accumulating riches, but about how those riches are used and whether they serve to uplift or degrade society. It's a good reminder not to let your solid gold toilet seat become your ultimate life goal. Another crucial lesson is the importance of moral and ethical foundations in society. The early Atlanteans were guided by divine laws and a strong sense of justice. As they abandoned these principles, their society began to unravel from within, long before the earth literally split open. Plato clearly illustrates that a civilization's strength lies not just in its technological prowess or military might, but in the integrity and virtue of its people. Without a strong moral compass, even the most advanced societies are built on sand, vulnerable to the slightest tremor. Historians still argue whether Plato's emphasis on moral decline was a direct reflection of historical events or a philosophical ideal intended to guide future city-states. Furthermore, the myth highlights the consequences of disconnecting from one's spiritual or natural roots. The Atlanteans, despite their divine ancestry, gradually forgot their origins and their reverence for the gods. They became self-absorbed, believing themselves masters of the world rather than stewards. This severance from their spiritual foundation or from a respectful relationship with nature directly preceded their cataclysmic end. It's a powerful ecological metaphor too. Disrespect the planet, and the planet might just decide to hit the reset button. The story also implicitly teaches about environmental responsibility. While Plato attributes the sinking to divine will, the mechanism is a natural disaster. It can be interpreted as nature's fierce response to humanity's imbalance or exploitation. The grand engineering feats of Atlantis, their mastery over springs and resources, might have, in their decline, turned into an abuse of their environment, inviting a catastrophic response. Finally, Atlantis serves as a powerful reminder of human fallibility. Even a civilization seemingly blessed by the gods and equipped with advanced knowledge is susceptible to the same flaws that plague all human endeavors: greed, pride, and the temptation of power. No society, no matter how great, is immune to these internal forces of destruction. It's a sobering thought, knowing that even with flying machines and glowing crystals, humanity can still stumble over its own ego. So, as you listen to this age-old tale, you're not just hearing about a lost continent. You're absorbing centuries of wisdom, a narrative designed to make us reflect on our own choices, our own societies, and the path we are charting for the future. The lessons of Atlantis are as relevant today as they were when Plato first recounted them, echoing a timeless warning from the depths of a vanished world. You've just absorbed the profound moral lessons offered by the Atlantean narrative, a cautionary tale echoing through the ages. But as you reflect on these teachings, a deeper, more philosophical question begins to surface. How do we categorize Atlantis itself? Is it history, philosophy, or pure fantasy? You find yourself grappling with the nature of truth and legend, navigating the blurred lines between what we know, what we believe, and what we imagine. You see, the story of Atlantis sits squarely in that fascinating, often frustrating, interstitial space between verifiable fact and enduring folklore. For centuries, scholars and laypeople alike have wrestled with its ontological status. Is it a lost chapter of human history, a concrete place that simply hasn't been found? Or is it a brilliant literary device, a philosophical construct designed to convey abstract ideas? On one hand, the sheer detail in Plato's account, particularly in Critias, makes it compellingly real. He named kings, described architecture, detailed social structures, and even specified geological events. This level of specificity is unusual for a purely allegorical tale, and leads many to believe that Plato must have been recounting something real, even if embellished over time. The persistent human drive to find Atlantis is rooted in this belief that there's a tangible, physical truth waiting to be uncovered. If it's real, it would fundamentally alter our understanding of ancient history, proving that advanced civilizations existed far earlier than we currently believe. A mainstream historical fact is that many ancient texts contain elements of both historical reporting and mythical storytelling, making their interpretation complex. However, the counterargument is equally strong. Many mainstream scholars categorize Atlantis as a philosophical allegory, a noble lie, or a sophisticated myth designed to serve Plato's philosophical purposes. In his dialogues, Plato often uses fictional narratives to illustrate complex political and ethical theories. In Timaeus and Critias, Atlantis serves as the antithesis to Plato's ideal state, represented by the ancient, virtuous Athens. Its decline from virtue to hubris and its subsequent destruction provide a powerful object lesson on the dangers of imperial ambition, materialism, and moral decay. Themes central to Plato's philosophical concerns. It's like a really elaborate thought experiment. But instead of just thinking about it, he decided to write a compelling epic. One key piece of evidence for its allegorical nature is Plato's claim that Atlantis was larger than Libya and Asia combined. This geographical exaggeration is so immense that it pushes the story beyond the realm of any known landmass or geological possibility, suggesting a symbolic rather than literal scale. Historians still argue whether Plato intended this hyperbole as a literal description or as a literary device to emphasize the sheer power and eventual downfall of Atlantis. It's a bit like someone saying their dog is bigger than a horse. You know it's an exaggeration, not a literal statement, unless they own a miniature pony and a very tiny dog. Moreover, the story of Atlantis appears nowhere else in ancient Greek literature before Plato. If such a monumental event and powerful empire truly existed, one might expect other contemporary or earlier writers to have mentioned it. Its sole origin in Plato's specific dialogues lends weight to the argument that it was his own creative construct, albeit one perhaps inspired by earlier oral traditions or other natural disasters. Yet, the line between myth and history is often blurry. Archaeological discoveries have frequently shown that elements of ancient myths, once considered pure fantasy, had a basis in historical reality. Think of Schliemann finding Troy, long thought to be a mythical city. This gives hope to Atlantologists. Perhaps Atlantis is simply awaiting its Schliemann. The challenge, of course, is that Troy left physical ruins, whereas Atlantis, by definition, vanished without a trace, save for Plato's words. The truth, perhaps, lies in the synthesis. Atlantis may not be a literal continent that sank in a day and night, precisely as Plato described, but it could be a highly embellished memory of a real devastating cataclysm, like the Thera eruption, combined with philosophical ideas about ideal societies and the dangers of human corruption. The legend then evolved, taking on a life of its own, becoming a universal myth that transcends its origins. It's a bit like a historical event turning into a folk song. The core might be true, but the details get a bit jazzed up over time. So as you rest your mind, consider this profound interplay. The story of Atlantis thrives precisely because it hovers between reality and imagination. It forces us to question our assumptions, to explore the limits of human knowledge, and to acknowledge that some truths might forever reside in the tantalizing realm of legend, inviting us to ponder their meaning, even if we can never touch their physical form. You've just wrestled with the fascinating, often perplexing distinction between truth and legend concerning Atlantis. Now, let's indulge in a moment of pure speculation, a delicious what-if scenario that fuels so much of the Atlantis fascination. What if it were real? Imagine for a moment that tomorrow morning, undeniable, irrefutable proof of Atlantis surfaces from the ocean depths. What would be the profound impact on our understanding of history, science, and even ourselves? Firstly, the most immediate and seismic impact would be on our understanding of ancient history and human civilization. The accepted timeline of human progress, which largely places the earliest advanced civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt around 3000–4000 BCE, would be utterly shattered. If Atlantis existed as described by Plato, as a global maritime power with advanced technology thousands of years before the recognized dawn of civilization, it would necessitate a complete rewrite of history textbooks. Every archaeological site, every ancient artifact would need to be reevaluated through the lens of this newly discovered, incredibly ancient, and sophisticated precursor civilization. It would be like discovering that the smartphone was invented in the Stone Age. Talk about a mind bender. The implications for technology and science would be enormous. If Atlantean ruins revealed actual advanced engineering, perhaps the fabled orichalcum as a power source, or unknown construction methods that defied ancient capabilities, it would open up entirely new avenues of scientific research. Imagine reverse engineering Atlantean hydraulics or energy systems. It could spark a technological revolution, providing solutions to modern problems or inspiring entirely new fields of study. We might discover materials or energy sources we never dreamed possible. Though, honestly, if they had anti-gravity, I just want to know how to skip traffic on the way to work. Furthermore, the discovery would profoundly affect our understanding of global cultural diffusion if survivors did indeed scatter, carrying their knowledge to various corners of the world. It would provide a concrete explanation for unexplained leaps in ancient architecture, astronomical knowledge, or shared mythological themes across disparate cultures. The similarities in pyramid construction between Egypt and Mesoamerica, for instance, might finally have a common Atlantean origin. It would turn historical puzzles into solved mysteries, like finding the missing piece to a jigsaw puzzle you've been working on for millennia. Beyond the tangible, the psychological and philosophical impact would be immense. The discovery of Atlantis would force humanity to confront its own hubris. We often believe ourselves to be the pinnacle of technological and societal achievement, constantly progressing. Finding a civilization that reached such heights only to fall would serve as a chilling, undeniable warning. It would underscore the fragility of even the most powerful societies and the timeless dangers of moral decay and unchecked ambition. It's a bit like getting a stern lecture from a very old, very wise, and very wet grandparent. The discovery would undoubtedly fuel endless debates about humanity's purpose, our place in the cosmos, and the cyclical nature of civilization. It might even inspire a renewed sense of wonder and humility, reminding us that there is still so much about our own past that we don't know, and that the history we accept might just be a small fragment of a much larger, more complex story. In Vietnam, where ancient traditions blend with modern aspirations, such a discovery might prompt new reflection on the balance between progress and preserving cultural roots. However, a mainstream historical fact is that, despite centuries of searching, no conclusive archaeological evidence of Atlantis has ever been found that satisfies the rigorous standards of the scientific community. Historians still argue whether the allure of finding Atlantis reflects a genuine possibility of a lost civilization or merely humanity's romantic yearning for a more dramatic and mysterious past. The very lack of evidence is a significant point in the ongoing scholarly debate. Moreover, the sheer practicalities of such a discovery would be daunting. The politics of who owns Atlantis, the massive resources required for its exploration and preservation, and the ethical dilemmas of disturbing a potentially sacred, lost civilization would be monumental. It wouldn't just be an archaeological dig, it would be a global event of unprecedented scale. Imagine the news headlines, the documentary series, the theme parks. Okay, maybe not the theme parks, but you get the idea. So, as you lay your head down, consider the radical shift in perspective that a real Atlantis would bring. It would challenge our assumptions, humble our pride, and perhaps inspire us to look at our own civilization with a renewed sense of responsibility. It's a thought that, even in its hypothetical nature, reminds us of the endless possibilities hidden in the deep past, just waiting for the right moment to surface. You've just imagined the profound, world-altering impact if Atlantis was suddenly to surface, rewriting everything we thought we knew. But now, as our journey through this ancient mystery draws to a close, you're left with the quiet realization that for now, Atlantis remains elusive. It exists not in excavated ruins, but in the enduring power of its narrative, leaving us with the unanswered questions remain. The enigma of Atlantis persists, a perpetual whisper from the deep, inviting endless speculation and a timeless fascination. You see, despite centuries of searching and countless theories, no definitive, irrefutable evidence of Atlantis has ever been found that satisfies the rigorous standards of mainstream science and archaeology. The oceans have been mapped with increasing precision. Satellites peer down from space, and deep-sea submersibles explore the abyssal plains. Yet, no city of concentric rings, no orichalcum-laden temples, no vast continental landmass, larger than Libya and Asia combined, has emerged from the depths. This absence of concrete proof is, for many, the most compelling argument against its literal existence as described by Plato. It's like searching your entire house for your car keys, only to realize they were never there in the first place. Very frustrating, but undeniably conclusive. The questions linger, forming a persistent hum in the background of human inquiry. If Atlantis was real, where exactly was it? Was Plato's "beyond the pillars of Heracles" a literal direction, or a symbolic one, hinting at a place far beyond the known world, perhaps even a dimension of philosophical thought? What kind of geological event could possibly cause an island continent to vanish so completely and so quickly, leaving no clear seismic or bathymetric signature? And then, there are the questions about Plato himself. Did he genuinely believe in Atlantis as a historical fact, passed down through his family line from Solon and the Egyptian priests? Or was he, as many mainstream historians contend, crafting a masterful philosophical allegory, a thought experiment designed to teach lessons about political virtue and moral decay, using a compelling, seemingly factual narrative as a vehicle for his ideas? Historians still argue whether Plato intended the story as a literal historical account or as a sophisticated literary device. This fundamental debate at the very source of the myth keeps the question alive. The lack of corroborating evidence from other ancient sources also poses a significant unanswered question. If Atlantis was a vast maritime empire, controlling parts of Europe and Africa and waging war against an ancient Athens, why did no other contemporary or earlier writers mention such a colossal power? The silence from other ancient historians, geographers, and philosophers is deafening to many scholars, suggesting that the story originated solely with Plato. It's a bit suspicious, isn't it? If a country as powerful as, say, the United States today suddenly vanished, you would think someone else would have written about it besides just one person. Furthermore, the very nature of human memory and storytelling adds another layer to the unanswered questions. How much of what Plato recounted was actual historical memory, potentially distorted and exaggerated over thousands of years of oral transmission? How much was his own creative genius, weaving together real cataclysms like the Thera eruption, common mythological themes like the Great Flood, and philosophical ideals into a seamless narrative? In Vietnam, as in many ancient cultures, oral traditions play a huge role in preserving stories and history, but they also evolve and adapt over generations. The enduring allure of Atlantis, despite these unanswered questions, is a testament to the power of mystery. It taps into our deepest desire to believe in something grander, something lost, something that challenges our current understanding of the world. It fuels the romantic notion that there are still great secrets hidden in plain sight, or perhaps hidden deep beneath the waves, waiting for the right moment or the right mind to uncover them. So, as you finally drift off, remember that the story of Atlantis is not just about a lost city. It's about the boundaries of human knowledge, the tantalizing pull of the unknown, and the endless capacity of the human spirit to imagine and to question. It's a riddle whispered from antiquity, and though the answers remain elusive, the quest for them continues, perhaps for all time.